At the end of John 20, John writes this. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in His name. And the book could have very easily ended right there. In fact, a lot of scholars think that it probably did. A lot of scholars who don't believe maybe the same things that we would believe. They believe that it probably did end there, and then somebody came along later on and added chapter 21 because it seems kind of like an afterthought. When in reality, what I would suggest to you happened was John does kind of bring his book to the climactic point right there at the end of chapter 20, that by believing you may have life in His name. And then he says, okay, now I've got to kind of wrap up a few loose ends. And so all of chapter 21, I would suggest, is John just kind of, as an author, wrapping up the loose ends. Kind of like I mentioned a few weeks ago, it's kind of like the last 45 minutes of the Lord of the Rings, Return of the Ring. The ring is destroyed, and then there's like a whole bunch of movie left. And for those of us who love the Lord of the Rings, we're like, yes, because I just wanted it to keep going. Some people are like, it goes on for like 4 hours. And then you have the Hobbit series come out after that. And it's just like watching the Lord of the Rings again. And I'm like, what's the problem with that? Just keep going. Make another one. Anyways, John's wrapping up some loose ends. And in recent weeks, we've seen him wrap up 2 loose ends in particular. The first one has to do with the question that you might be asking as you walk through John's Gospel. So what happens to the disciples now? We've watched the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Now what happens to the disciples? What about their mission? To make Christ known, to make disciples of all nations, to be fishers of men. What's going to happen with these disciples now? And so John kind of ties up that loose end with this scene out on the ocean, or not the ocean, the sea, and it's a fishing scene / beach scene. And Jesus reveals Himself to 7 of the disciples for the 3rd time. And the way that He does it is by providing them with a miraculous catch of fish. The disciples are fishing all night long, and they have a totally unsuccessful night of fishing. And Jesus calls to them from the seashore. They don't know that it's Him at first. He says, throw the nets over the right side. Actually, first He says, how's the fishing? And they're like, terrible. We haven't caught anything. So, okay, throw the nets over the right side of the boat. And they do it. And they catch 153 large fish. And it would seem that the point of the story is that John is helping us understand, or maybe this is a better way to say it, Jesus is helping the disciples to understand that He intends to cause them to be successful in their assignment to be fishers of men and make disciples of all nations. Jesus intends to cause them to be successful in that assignment, but they're not going to have any success apart from Him. Ministry success is not a matter of human striving. It's a matter of God's sovereign power at work as we give ourselves to the mission objectives that He assigns to us. Being faithful to your calling and waiting on the Lord. That's where ministry success comes from. Faithful to your calling and waiting on the Lord, who works in sovereign power as we are attending to the things that He has assigned to us, that He's told us to do. Throw your net over the right side of the boat and watch the Lord do what the Lord can only do. Your calling. What you're called. What's the Lord calling you to do? We'll come back to that. Because He does have a couple of callings, specific callings that John talks to us about in just a few minutes. A calling for Peter's life, a calling for John's life. That's one loose end. What about these disciples? And as you're thinking about these disciples and their calling and what's future ministry going to look like for them, you may be wondering, so whatever happened with Peter? Because Peter's last big scene was not a pretty one. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. So whatever happened with that situation? Sorry, thank you. I don't know how you roll with that. Just play it off like it didn't happen. Definitely happened. So whatever happened with Peter? Well, what we looked at last week was just the tying up of another loose end in verses 15 through 19, where Peter is reinstalled into the work of the kingdom, and he's given a specific assignment. Peter, feed my sheep, feed the flock, shepherd God's people. It's a calling of Peter into some sort of pastoral type of ministry. When you read 1 Peter chapter 5, you see that the Apostle Peter, somewhere down the road, he is actually functioning in a pastor-like leadership role as Peter. Thank you, Amy. Sorry about that. Just a little clean up on aisle 1. We'll just leave it there. Get it later. There we go. All right. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter says, I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder. He's a pastor now. And he's now talking to other pastors, and he says, shepherd the flock of God. He's exhorting them to shepherd, just as Jesus had called on him to be a shepherd. So at some point, Peter embraces this calling to be a pastor. He embraces the assignment that Jesus has given to him. And that assignment came at a cost. We saw a couple weeks ago that with the reinstatement of Peter came the revelation that Peter is going to suffer as a pastor. In fact, Peter's going to die. This is going to take his life. Peter's going to be crucified. And he was. As far as we can tell, somewhere in 67, 68 AD, Peter's crucified under persecution by the Emperor Nero. But before Peter gets to the point of acceptance of this calling on his life to shepherd the flock of God at the cost of his life, he has to wrestle through the calling a little bit. And he doesn't come to the point of full acceptance until some point after Jesus helps him process it a little bit. And that's what's going to happen today. Jesus is going to help him process this calling. Peter hears that he's called to suffer, and now he's got a question about somebody else's calling. As though he said, well, what about him? Peter, you're going to suffer. I'm going to suffer? What about him? It's kind of the feel of this passage. And that brings us to the final scene in John's Gospel. We're still at the beach. Jesus is now walking and talking with Peter. John is behind them. And as John listens in, he eventually records this scene for us and gives us some insights about what's going on here. Let me read one more time. Join me, if you would. Verse 20 in chapter 21. Peter turned, as he's walking down the beach with Jesus, and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. That doesn't mean that there were other disciples that Jesus did not love. It means that John knew himself as a deeply loved man. He knew that Jesus cared very deeply for him, as he does all of us. Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who had leaned back against him during the supper and had said, Lord, who is it that's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, Lord, what about this man? I'm going to suffer. What about him? Jesus said to him, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. So the saying spread abroad among the brothers that the disciple was not to die. Yet Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Verse 24. This is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things and who has written these things. And And we know that his testimony is true. So here's Jesus and Peter walking down the beach, and they're strolling behind them is this mysterious disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, throughout John's Gospel, he's made reference to this disciple whom Jesus loved, the beloved disciple. For example, in chapter 19, verse 26, when Jesus saw his mother at the cross, Jesus is hanging on the cross, when Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." From that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. That's who we're talking about. He was at the cross. He took in the mother of Jesus. That's who we're talking about. Or in chapter 20. Now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. John just throws that in there, right? He's got to throw that in there. The one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb. We do not know where they've laid him." So Peter went out with the other disciple. They were going toward the tomb. And both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Like, that's a little faster. John keeps making reference to this. Or, chapter 13, after saying these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit and testified, "Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. One of his disciples, whom Jesus loved, was reclining at table at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So that disciple leaned back against him and said to him, "Lord, who is it?" The other disciple whom Jesus loved is the disciple who's now walking behind Jesus and Peter on the beach. And as John closes the gospel, he's cleaning up two loose ends regarding the beloved disciple that he's mentioned throughout the gospel. One, he dispels this rumor that the beloved disciple is going to never die. And then two, he reveals a little bit of the identity of the beloved disciple, the one that he's brought up throughout the whole gospel. So we'll take those one at a time. Let's talk about the rumor first. There's this rumor, right? Here's how it unfolds. Peter asks this question, "Hey, what about John? What's John going to do? I'm going to suffer. People going to dress me and take me somewhere I don't want to go and stretch out my arms. I'm going to be crucified. I'm going to suffer for the glory of God. What about John?" And Jesus says, "Hey, you don't worry about John. If I want John to stay alive until I return, that's my business. You don't need to concern yourself with that." And the nature of that answer, I think, probably indicates that what Jesus sees in Peter's question, "What about John?" What Jesus sees in that question is that Peter is concerned that John's not going to have to suffer. Like, I'm going to have to, but what about him? And here's the point that Jesus is making. All you need to worry about is your assignment. That's all you need to concern yourself with is what are you called to? Now, I think we can all understand what Peter's struggling with here. I mean, if you put yourself in his situation, I think this is what Peter is feeling. Okay? Imagine that you were told that you get the privilege of being the only person on your block who gets to contribute this year to the welfare of your neighborhood by paying taxes. Wait, what about them? Well, what about? I mean, why do I have to go through that? And why do I have to suffer that? And why don't they? Right? That's how Peter feels in this situation. Now notice that Jesus doesn't say, John's not going to suffer. Jesus didn't say that. And Jesus doesn't say, John is going to suffer. What Jesus says is, don't worry about John. You follow me. Not John, me. And John follows me. However I tell him to. And if I don't want him to die, then he's not going to die. You don't worry about it. Regardless of John's calling, you follow me. Peter and John were friends. They went to the same school. School of Jesus. Better than any seminary, right? 3 years, they were in the same program, right? Master's program, probably. They lived in the same community for 3 years. And they don't have the same future. They're going to have different assignments in what's coming next in their life. And as Peter receives his assignment, he's sort of concerned about what John's doing. And Jesus says, take your eyes off John. You put your eyes on me. What does Jesus call you to? Because that's the path by which your life will make the biggest impact for the glory of Jesus. Your assignment is the path by which God intends to maximize your life for the glory of His name. And it's easy to think that if you were called to what somebody else is called to, and you guys all do this too, I'm sure, you've got in your mind some idea of what it really looks like to be used powerfully by God, and you look at somebody else and maybe their gifts, and you think, if I had their assignment, then I could make impact too. And what I'm saying is, the biggest impact that will be made for the sake of the kingdom is as you embrace your calling, not theirs. I went to a very prestigious school, 2 of them. I went to the John Piper School. That's not what they called it, but that's what it was. And when I got there, John Piper's just a well-known pastor in evangelical circles. Actually, he's not a pastor anymore, but at the time he was. And I moved my family to Minneapolis, Minnesota, so I could sit under this man's teaching, and I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to be discipled by this guy. And so I got there, and there were 12 guys who came into this program, and one of them, Joe Rigney, was the youngest guy in our class, and he got the privilege of living in John Piper's basement. He and his family got the basement apartment in Piper's house. And I was like, dang, man. I wanted that, you know? I didn't even know that was a thing. Who gets that seat? And they ate dinner with them each week, and they got very close, and John and Joe were having all sorts of great conversations together, and Joe was working on projects for John, and they started doing maybe some traveling together. And then at the Desiring God National Pastors Conference one year, there's Joe up on the stage, and he's facilitating a conversation between John Piper and Doug Wilson, and I'm thinking, like, how did Joe, like, that could have been me. No! That's not my calling. Nick Noah, same class. He's doing student ministry at Harvard right now. Alex Kirk, who was my teacher, went to Cambridge afterwards and is now doing leadership development in Indonesia. Brian Tabb was in my class, and he's now a professor, PhD. Justin Taylor is a well-known guy on the Gospel Coalition, well-known blogger. One of the teachers. These are the guys that I was surrounded by, and I had to work through what's my calling. Because it's really easy to look at somebody else's calling and think, I could have impact if I were in Justin Taylor's situation. I would fail in that situation. I'm not wired for that. That's not me. That's not my calling. You have a calling. And that's all that matters. Your calling. How does God want to use you and your gifts? All you need to worry about is your assignment. The mission objectives that are given to you. That's the point. And it seems somehow that the early Christian community kind of missed the point because this rumor started. That, verse 23. So the saying spread among the brothers that this disciple was not to die. Yet, let me tie up this loose end. Let me clarify something. Jesus did not say to him that he was not to die, but if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? John's just clarifying that Jesus didn't say he was actually going to live until Jesus returned. He's just dispelling a rumor. So for the early church, as John writes this gospel, he's trying to clarify a rumor that's kind of floating around the early church. And as he closes the gospel, he's just, as a kind of parting word, he's just saying, by the way, nobody ever said I actually wasn't going to die. He takes us back to the scene to tell us what actually happened there. Peter had an assignment. John has a different one. Each of us must give our attention to our personal calling. That's the point. Now, you might be curious, what was John's assignment? What was John called to? And he reveals that as he ties up the final loose end, which is here in verse 24. He starts to give us a little bit of the identity of the beloved disciple. The disciple who's walking on the beach behind Peter, the one who had leaned on Jesus at the Last Supper, verse 24. This is the disciple who is bearing witness about these things and who has written these things, and we know that his testimony is true. What John is doing here is just giving credence to everything that we just read in the Gospel of John. I was there. You know that disciple who was at the cross? He's the one who wrote this account. You know that disciple who was at the Last Supper? He's the one who wrote this account. You know the disciple who walked with Jesus on the seashore after he resurrected? It was me, and I wrote the story down for you. And that was my assignment. My job was to be there as an eyewitness and live to hand off to you what I saw with my own eyes. That is the disciple who's giving this account, and that's what Jesus called me to. I had a job to do. To take a sliver of what Jesus did and to preserve it for you in an account of his life and his death and his resurrection. And it really was just a sliver of what could be said. Look at verse 25. Now there were also many other things that Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself would not contain the books that could be written. The world cannot possibly contain all the things that could be said about this wonderful man who revealed God to us. My job was to provide a little glimpse, and it was my honor. That's John's perspective on his calling. It was my honor. The whole world could not contain what could be said about this guy. That's my little Gospel of John is just some little tiny piece of what could be said. That was my call. What's yours? And that's the flavor of the ending of John's Gospel. This was my call. There's so much that could be said. What's yours? What's your sliver? What's your small contribution? What's your calling? Peter had his part to play. This was my part to play. And it leads us to the question, what's your part? What's your role? What's your calling? What's your assignment? No man or woman or child can do it all. The only thing you need to worry about is this. What is your work in the kingdom? What's your calling? It doesn't have to be the same as mine. It doesn't have to be the same as those who are around you. What does it mean for you when Jesus says, you follow me? What does it mean for you and your family? And that question may have several practical applications in your life today, but there's one in particular that I want to draw your attention to. It's a fitting question. What's your calling? It's a fitting question to be left with at the conclusion of John's Gospel, because that's happening at the same time that we are coming to a conclusion in a certain era of the life of Choice City Church. A season that's coming to a close, and an opportunity that's opening up now for the church as we head into the future. And with this opportunity, I would like to encourage you to consider your calling. What is Jesus calling you to in light of this opportunity, in light of this transition that we're going to make? I would like for you to consider whether or not you are called to join us for the next season of our church's life. As a result of a considerable amount of input from some ministry leaders and church planters, assessment teams, together with a season of prayer and discussion with many of you, I've decided that we're going to replant Choice City Church. We're going to reset, we're going to restart Choice City Church. And so beginning next week, which will be our final week here at the Wolverine, after that we're going to Wild Boar, which is on College and Prospect area. So next week is our last week here at the Wolverine. And beginning next week, I'm going to start unpacking a vision and a plan for the church moving forward. And I just want to give you a heads up. We're going to do a significant reset. We're going to make kind of a clean break from what we've been doing, and we're going to head into a new season. It's going to feel different. It's going to be different. We're bringing closure to what we've been doing, and we're going to honor the good, and we're going to move into something that I think is very exciting for the future of our church. And I'm excited to share it with you because I believe with all my heart that God's in it. And what you have to do is ask yourself whether or not you are called to be a part of that with us. I'm encouraging you, I'm asking you, I'm exhorting you. Please take seriously the question, are you called to be a part of this? And frankly, it won't be for everyone. Some of you, and I know this because we've already talked and you've already told me, some of you are not called to continue with us. Some of you are called onward, and you know what? We praise God for that, not because we're losing you, but because we praise God for you following God's call on your life. We celebrate that, and you'll go with our blessing. And I hope that as you go, you'll bless us as we follow our call and what God has for this church. And some of you, many of you, most of you, I hope, will sense in the coming weeks and months that God is in this, and that vision will move you, and you'll have a sense of holy anticipation, and you'll conclude that Jesus is calling you to be a part of this with us, to remain with us, and to pursue what God's calling us into as we head into the future. We'll have some people who are like, I don't know if I'm in for it. And to that I would say, that's okay. We need people who feel excited about it to be a part of it. And people who don't, to find something that they're excited about. And that's okay. We're looking for, to use Tom Harkis's language, Sounds dangerous. Count me in. It's risky. What we're doing is risky. Replanting a church is risky. Sounds dangerous. Count me in. Amen. Eagerly throw your weight behind it. So, we're going to get ready to move. I can't wait to see what God has in store for us. The vision and planning details are on the way beginning next week. Feel free to come talk to me if you want to kind of get a head start on some of that and get a feel for where we're headed. If this takes, most of you already know this. I've talked with you. Most of you already one-on-one. But feel free to come talk to me. We're going to be praying, seeking, asking God to do great things. And I want to encourage you to be praying and seeking your calling. What's your mission objective as we head into the next season? Which is what John, I think, would have us do. Which means I think that's what Jesus would have us do. So that's what we're going to do. So please come talk to me if you have any questions. And with that, let's close.